everyone. I am Mary Kate Luke, marketing specialist here at Hasmark Publishing International, and we are back with another episode of our Life After Release series, which is where we interview our past authors, talk about their successes, talk about everything that has to do with the publishing process, kind of the ups and downs and the exciting things that can happen once you publish a book. And I am joined today by a wonderful author, Laura Valvasori, and she has written a book, Good to Grow: Cultivate Your Mindset and Habits to Thrive as an Entrepreneur. So welcome, Laura. I'm so happy to be chatting with you today.
Well, thank you for having me.
I was hoping you could start by chatting a little bit about yourself and about the book.
Sure. So my name is Laura Valvasori. I am a marketing foundation strategist and mentor for entrepreneurs. And I have had a consulting business, a marketing consulting business for the past 9 years. My background is in marketing, but for professional services firms, so law firms and accounting firms. And I did that for 20 years and then felt the calling to go out on my own and start my own business, and did that about 9 years ago. And Good to Grow is really a result of everything that I've learned in my own experience. And in the past year, a lot of people have been deciding that they want something different in their life. The pandemic has created a real big wake-up call. And I know that a lot of people don't want to go back to traditional employment, and they're looking at starting businesses. So I was starting to get people reaching out to me and asking questions. And I thought, wow, there's so much that I have learned. And I'm a part of this network of other entrepreneurs that I didn't even know existed when I was in the corporate world, and how much I could share so that it could save other people some of the time and tears that it took me to figure it all out. And we can talk more about the process of writing the book, but I started in one direction and I actually ended up in a bit of a more focused direction, which is what I think makes my book a bit unique and is what is resonating with people.
I love that. Now, would you say that it's your own personal business experience or maybe the pandemic shift that helped as an inspiration to write this book?
Yeah, I say in the book on the back cover, I say that it's part memoir and part pocket mentor. So
Love that.
I've shared what my journey has been to try to help other people see what's possible. And I've also brought in the perspectives of many different women who have also taken the leap, and they've shared their own wisdom that I've done little pullouts throughout the book called Entrepreneur Insights. And then I've also brought in learnings from a lot of books that I've read because I'm an avid reader and wanted to share some of that knowledge that I've gained and sort of brought it all together. So it's very focused on the mindset and habits that you have to develop and cultivate as a business owner. So there are many books that talk about how to start a business, the nuts and bolts, and setting up a website and doing all of the things for the business. But the thing that I realize looking back is that nobody talks to you about the internal journey that takes place. So how you have to change and grow as a person in order to support yourself and motivate yourself and thrive as a business owner to then be able to build a thriving business. So that's really what the focus of the book is on. And in the last couple of years, I've spent a lot of time studying mindset and have a really different understanding and set of tools that I wanted to give people to access to some of what I've learned so they can have that earlier on in their journey as well. So it's almost a pseudo business book. It talks about my journey in starting and gives you a lot of tools that you can have from the beginning, but seasoned entrepreneurs are also reading it and taking a lot away from it, from their own personal growth and development as well.
Absolutely. And I think that that human element is what's so important and relatable for people. And I love that you mentioned to having to make sort of that shift from being an employee to being an employer and being an entrepreneur. And those changes, they don't happen overnight. There's a lot that goes into that I think people don't even think about or consider when they want to start a business.
Yeah, and I'm hoping raising awareness of that and giving people some tools. And it's a very reflective book. So I ask people a lot of questions or things to think about. I'm not by any means trying to be prescriptive and give you this formula. It is giving you guidance of areas to reflect on that'll help you build a stronger foundation right from the get-go.
Which is so important. Now, talking about the whole process, how would you say, in terms of length, how long did it take you from the conception of the idea to write the book to finally launching it?
So it took me around 14, 15 months from start to finish. And I spent about 5 months writing the first draft.
Mhm.
And when I finished, I unknowingly, as a first time author, thought that I was close to the finish line. And I actually reached out to Hasmark at that point. I'm like, okay, I've got my draft. I'm ready. I just got to clean a few things up. And then when I started sending it out to beta readers and getting some feedback, I realized that it needed to be more focused and that the first draft is only the first draft. And then I spent the next about 3 months doing a rewrite. And it really was, I almost wrote two books in the end. But it's the book that I think it was meant to be at this point. So it was end to end about 14 months from idea and outlining inception to launching on Amazon.
That's awesome. That's actually a pretty short and succinct timeline when you think about it.
Yeah, it was an intense time. It was a real focus for me in that time. So yeah.
Now you mentioned that first draft. Would you say that there were any other like kind of large hurdles that you had to jump over, big barriers that you faced in the process?
I think that was the biggest hurdle for me, was having created something that I felt was, it was kind of all the things,
Mhm.
and finding the thread from that point and making it more focused was a real challenge. And it took me a while to go through it and understand what the thread was, and then have the, I don't know what the word is, to pull out the parts, like things that I had written, to not be precious about what I had already created, because
Right.
there was huge sections that came out because they just didn't align with what I was. And those sections actually, well, there's two things I'd love to say about those. One, I've used them in other ways in other times, so it wasn't lost effort. The other thing was, I was really conscious in this process of living the things I talk about in the book and bringing the right energy to the writing process. So when I sat down to write, I had to be feeling good and be in the right mindset and let it happen naturally and flow out. And if I started to feel resistance, like it was feeling hard or I was getting frustrated, I walked away. And in the past, I would have forged through at my own mental and physical health and just tried to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And there were sections that happened in. And most interestingly, those are the sections that came out,
Wow.
many of them. So it was, I guess, my higher self almost kind of directing me to the things that I was meant to be focusing on. And yeah, I just thought that was interesting when I went through the editing process. I'm like, wow, I remember the day I wrote that and how it felt difficult and challenging to write. And other days that it just kind of flowed. And those pieces I feel the best about. So there is something definitely to being in the right energy
Mhm.
and allowing the book to come through you.
Yeah, and not rushing and just knowing when to step away. I think
Right.
it's so big with more than just writing, but
Right.
absolutely with that, with something creative, just knowing when to kind of put the pencil down and come
Right.
back when you're ready is that's huge.
It's this balance between having the discipline to continue to write and just keep getting something on paper without the perfectionism taking over of wanting to edit as you're writing, but just getting it out as a first pass. And there's a balance between being disciplined and continuing to write and being in the right energy to do
Yeah,
it.
it's a tough game to kind of stay in both headspaces.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure.
Would you say that there was any sort of big, maybe aha or breakthrough moment that led to maybe the completion of the book or anything along the way that helped kind of get over those hurdles?
I think at one point when I was writing, I was maybe three-quarters of the way through, and I was starting to get tired of the writing process or get frustrated. I was like, man, I'm still writing. And I started to jump into doing other tasks like, well, I'm going to need to figure out this and I'm going to need to figure out that. So I started going to what felt easier, and starting to plan some of the launch activities. And in my mind, I was rationalizing it as, oh, well, I'll just work on those things when I'm not feeling quite in the energy of writing. But then I started focusing a lot on those other things. And I'm in a mastermind with a few other women, and we meet weekly and keep each other accountable. And I was talking about some of the things that I was doing, and one of my mastermind sisters called me on it, and she said, if you don't write, there is going to be no book to launch. Like, is that really where you should be focusing your energy right now? So I took on, and she was right. When I was honest with myself, she was right. And so I took on this mantra of I am a writer who writes. And I just kept saying that and focusing on that, and trying to just continuing to move forward, and focused on the writing and didn't get myself distracted by the other stuff. And that allowed me to complete the book. I'm not sure if she hadn't called me out on that, I might still be writing.
And it's so hard when you start, you kind of divert what you're doing. You get comfortable in something else, and then
Yes.
having to almost come out of your comfort zone again to go back to what you're doing is just, it's hard.
Right. And it was uncomfortable. Some of the concepts that I write in the book, I'm trying to share what can be really meaty, big subjects around mindset and some elements of spirituality. And I'm trying to convey them in a way that feels bite-sized and just piques someone's interest without me writing a grand essay on those topics. And it was really challenging to try to keep it conversational in a way that would be accessible for people who are not familiar with any of these concepts,
Right.
yet interesting for people that were. So that balance, like, there was some challenging parts to write for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely tough to kind of step outside of your comfort zone to, especially getting to the finish line. I think that's always the hardest part, right at
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of, I want to chat about post-launch and all those exciting things. I want to ask you if you could tell me a little bit about what it was like the moment that you found out that you were a bestseller, if you remember that moment. I know it was quite recent. But I do want to mention too to our viewers and anyone who's watching that Laura has really made, she's had a feat here with her book. She was in the overall top 100 books in all of Canada on Amazon, which is absolutely phenomenal. This is something to be so proud of and such an achievement. And everyone at Hasmark was so excited when this happened. So I want to extend our congratulations to you because
Thank
that's
you.
like such a big achievement. So if you could talk a little bit about that, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah, it was a wild launch day. So my book went up on Amazon a few weeks before the actual launch date, as is recommended, so that the algorithm can start finding it and you can start having a few people put reviews up. But I concentrated all of my launch efforts on a specific day to try to hit bestseller in some of those categories. And so I actually hit a couple little categories in the days leading up to the launch. And it almost didn't feel real to me because I was like, oh, those are, kind of small. And they weren't, there was a few that I had my eye on that felt really meaningful to me because they were connected to the book. And so on the launch day, I did a virtual launch party and I had about 40 people on. I had a barrage of posts going out on my own social media, and I had created a whole kit of social media graphics for other people to share. So the people that were contributors to the book, I'd created graphics and posts. Like, I tried to make it as easy as possible for everyone to share. And I had newsletters going out. There was all kinds of stuff going out. And I was being tagged in so many things that I was trying to keep up with resharing and commenting and thanking people and all of those things. And then I started getting texts from the team that I'm working with. They're like, oh my God, you just hit in this category. And oh my God, you just hit in that category. And almost like capturing the screen captures to make sure that I had it. It was kind of surreal. So then I started hitting categories that I really wanted to be in. So self-employment,
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, and women in business were three that I really wanted to hit bestsellers in. And I hit those three and I was like, wow. And then I got a note that I hit in a most gifted book category for women in business and self-employment and entrepreneurship. And I didn't even know that was a category. And that felt emotional for me because I've always envisioned this book getting into the hands of people by it being gifted to other people that need it.
Mhm.
And to see that come up, I was like, oh my gosh, people are buying it for other people. And that felt really, really special. And then a girlfriend of mine started texting me and saying, "Do you know that you're number 125 of all books in Amazon?" I was like, "What?" And again, I wasn't even looking at that as a rank.
Yeah.
And so then I started watching that number, and then it jumped to 50, and then it jumped and it jumped, and I got to number 31 at one point during the day. And I didn't also at the time recognize how much of an accomplishment that was until Judy sent me a really kind note and said that it was not something that many people were
Mhm.
able to achieve. So it felt really cool and special. And yeah. And
It's awesome.
it also in a little way felt natural because I've been writing a goal statement every day throughout my writing process that I am the author of an Amazon best-selling book empowering thousands of women. And I've written that line over and over and over. So ingraining it in my subconscious belief, I believed that I was going to hit a bestseller in some categories. I just didn't know what it was going to look like. So it felt extremely gratifying
Mhm.
and almost natural in some way as well.
It's so exciting. It still like gets me giddy with excitement just thinking about it. And for anyone, I will just say for anyone who doesn't know and anyone who's watching, there are like tens of thousands of books in the overall in just Canada. If we're talking even US, there's like sometimes hundreds of thousands, but definitely upwards of tens of thousands. So to be in that 31 spot and tens of thousands of books is just it's so exciting and so incredible.
It
And we're
was,
holding
yeah.
steady. Laura and I were just chatting before the call that the book is still like number one, number two in lots of categories, which is so exciting. It's exciting
Yeah.
to see that that's like still touching people. Like you said, being gifted by people that's amazing. It's such an exciting accomplishment. Along those lines, I want to ask too, is there any other successes that you've celebrated in relation to the book? Maybe just like a wonderful note from someone or a special
Yeah,
that you
there's
received.
been a lot. So the book launched on September 20th, and I did a virtual book launch party on that day. Had a lot of people join me that day. And then I made the decision to host an in-person party for some of my close friends and family and colleagues. And I kind of resisted doing it at first because I thought, well, I don't want people to have to drive and it's not that big a deal and da da da. And I was so happy I did it. So I did that the week after. And to have friends and family and everyone come together to celebrate felt incredible. So that was something I'll always carry from this experience. And then I've now started receiving notes from people saying things like, "This is the exact book that I needed right now. I can't tell you how divinely timed this is. I feel like you're telling my story. I'm learning so much." And people that are reading it from a business perspective and even just personally that aren't business owners are getting a lot of the book as well. So getting those kinds of notes is amazing. And um, just continue. I've been on tons of podcasts in the last few weeks, and those episodes are starting to drop. I was featured on the cover of She Corporated magazine
Oh my
last
God.
week, which was just a cool experience to have. And yeah, I was just reflecting on this yesterday, and all this has happened in the last 3 weeks. And it feels like I'm like, it's only been 3 weeks. And yeah, so now continuing to keep the momentum going and reaching out to the next group of podcasts and women's organizations. And I'm promoting a bulk cashback offer. So if people want to gift the book to clients, if they're coaches, there's an option to do that. And I'm also hosting a book club for people to read the book together that I offered as a pre-order bonus to try to incent people to pre-order the Kindle or order on launch day. And so I'm hosting that in November as well.
Amazing. So many incredible things going on. I have one question that's mostly a curious question for me. If there is
Sure.
anything that you could go back and change about the book, would you?
I don't think so at this time. There's not anything that I would change about the book. I think one lesson I learned in the process that I would have changed and would suggest someone going down the path might think about is when I sent it out to groups of beta readers, I started with people closest to me, and then I sort of started going to larger groups of people. And at one time, I'd sent it out to about 15 people. And then I started getting all of their feedback at the same time, and there was competing, and it was like a administrative challenge to go through all the feedback. I might have gone to smaller groups at a time so that I could digest the feedback and incorporate it before going to the next group. So that's something that I took away that I might have done differently that would have saved me some headaches.
Good. Well, and I'm glad that there's nothing you would change. I always like to ask that just because I'm curious, but you know what? Most people have the
Yeah.
same answer, which is nice because it's good to know that you're so proud of what you've done and there's nothing you change about it, which is awesome.
Yeah, there's always things that oh, I could add this and I could that, but you have to stop yourself at some point
Absolutely.
because I never would have been able to finish it if I just kept adding and adding, and that could be a future book. I don't know. I have no idea.
And you've segued into my final question, which is
Oh,
there anything that's on the horizon for you? Any other books in the works or?
at this time, I am just celebrating this book, and I am giving myself some space to feel out what's next. So the book itself, it's been an intense time of writing it while still running my business and having teenage kids and all of the life stuff that's been happening. And so I'm giving myself a little bit of space right now. And I don't know. I feel like it's when you've just had a child and someone asks if you're going to have a second, it might be a bit too soon to answer that question. I'm not sure. I'd always felt like I had a book in me, but I didn't know what it was about. And this is the book. And I might feel down the road that there's something else I want to share, but I don't know. I will see where the universe guides me next.
I love that. And you know what? Laura's book, it's available now. We'll lead off and end off with that. Go to Amazon, pick it up because it is fantastic. Gift it to a friend. Start a group, start a read along group. There's so many amazing things you can do. And I think it was so true what you said that this book doesn't just have to be for entrepreneurs. There's something that you can find in it for everyone. So I think that it's an important story to share.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with us today, Laura. It's been wonderful. And like I said, her book, Good to Grow, it's available on Amazon. You can pick it up now.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.